So good evening, everyone. I will call this special meeting of the Council of Fundy Albert for August 13th, 2024 to order. First order of business is the approval of the agenda. Today's agenda was circulated in advance. I would accept a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. So moved by Councillor Coates, seconded by Councillor Land. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's carried unanimously. The next item is conflict of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare in relation to today's agenda? Not hearing any, we will move on to item number 4 on the agenda, which is Codiac Cycling Trails insurance. So Codiac Cycling Trails requires liability insurance to operate in the White Rock recreational area and is asking the municipality to pay the invoice. A motion is required in order to consider this request. So if someone would be so kind to read the motion.
I don't think there was a motion attached to the package.
Okay, so you can just.
Okay. So I'd like to make a motion to assist Codiac Cycling Trails with an coverage of insurance in the amount of $2,575.
So moved by Councillor Elderkin, seconded by Councillor Land. Any discussion on the motion? So this is an opportunity to speak. Councillor Elderkin, did you have any questions or comments?
I do, thank you. So a couple of questions I have is what do we pay currently versus what they're asking for? What did we do last year versus this year is one of my first questions.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, maybe we can get our Chief Administrative Officer to answer those questions as they come up rather than let them.
So to my knowledge, there was nothing in place previously. They are a volunteer organization and therefore unable to get their own insurance. And this way here, the organization is protected and there's liability insurance for anybody that's using the trails as well.
And my second question was, I don't believe that we have a budget line for this. So what budget line would we be looking at taking that out of? Because I don't think when I scanned things last night, I don't think we seen. The other thing that was a bit concerning was, well, not concerning, I guess that I did pick up on was that the quote itself had no date. So is it an old quote, a new quote?
That's a new quote. I know that one we just received recently. And as for the budget line, I apologize. I did not talk to our treasurer about that one. But I know that the amount of $2,575 isn't a large amount for any of our budgets currently. And that would most likely go under, I believe there's one for recreation. I'd have to get back to exactly which budget line that is, but I do know that it would fit into our existing budget.
So there was nothing in place in the past. So what stemmed that we have this additional insurance? Because I recognize that they've been using this trail for a number of years. Mm-hmm. So how did this insurance come up and then become our liability?
Yeah. So they were looking at liability issues and a lawyer was advised. So they went to a lawyer to get information and they were told that they needed to carry their own liability insurance protection to protect them from their own operations and from the responsibilities they pertain as what they do. Oh my goodness, let me read that again. Insurance is required due to liability reasons. The lawyer has advised that each organization, meaning the Village of Fundy, Albert, and the CCT, to carry their own insurance, liability insurance protection. So we as a village have our own insurance that it would fall under for liability. CCT did not, which is why we're asking for this amount to allow them to have their own insurance, which would help them with their responsibilities. And the agreement is done. However, the CCT wants to ensure that the insurance would be covered by the village before signing. So there's an agreement in place between the village and the CCT. Before they sign that agreement for management of the trails, they want to ensure that the insurance is provided on both sides.
So if I understand correctly from my past involvement on that particular issue, is that there was no previous formal agreement for them to be managing the trails and building trails. So we reached out and developed an agreement between the village and Kodiak Cycling Trails. And part of that agreement is that I believe they have to carry, there's a reference there that they must carry their own liability insurance while they're operating inside the trails. The village has insurance, but it would be to protect if anyone happened to get injured on our property or on any of our assets, then we would be covered for that. But they would be required to have their own liability coverage for that. Now, they are a volunteer organization. They do charge memberships, mostly for the cyclists that are using the trails. The folks that are in there walking their dogs and hiking and those types of things, they don't carry memberships. So it's essentially, if I understand correctly, it's to protect them from someone being injured through some of the activities that they're performing on the trails. Not for the use of the trails, but rather if they're working on let's say on an area of the trail, somebody happens to come across and get hurt while they're in there working, then it protects them. And I believe, speaking with our Director of Community Services, that it was our legal counsel that suggested that they hold their own liability insurance.
So our insurance does not cover the volunteerism that they do to maintain. Is that what we're saying?
That is my understanding, is it was our legal counsel's advice that they have their own coverage. And really what it boils down to is they don't have sufficient funds to pay for liability coverage. The risk, if council decides that we shouldn't be paying that, the risk is that they will not be able to enter into an agreement with the council or with our local government. And if that happens, then they won't be able to manage the trail system for us. That's as I understand.
And the trails were identified as a council priority, the maintenance and the agreements in place for the trails.
Does that answer your question, Council?
Yep. So
Okay.
given the extra support, I will be supporting the motion.
Okay. Councillor Coates?
I'm in favor. And I think if that's gonna be every year that we're gonna do that, we tend to, if we've only got one quote, from what I could see, they've got one quote.
One thing that we may be able to do is ask them to obtain 3 quotes, because I believe that's their quote. They're the ones requesting the insurance coverage. So we would probably be well advised to ask them to get 3 competitive quotes for the same insurance. But it amounts to the same thing.
Pretty well.
Right.
Yeah, I'm showing.
Okay. Council Land?
I'm in favor of it also, it's gonna protect anybody that's using that site, and there's a lot of people in there. I think it's just good.
And as I pointed out, unless I'm mistaken, any users of the park, when there's no one there, is actually the village is protected through our own insurance policy. This would only protect them in the event that they're in there working, and or their volunteers. If they happen to be hurt while they're in there, that would protect them. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Ward Russell.
I think a couple of my comments or questions have been answered, but I would prefer if there was more than just one quote.
Mhm.
I believe there should be at least 3 quotes. So we can ask the cycling group to go back and get 2 more quotes. Question with regards to, I assume there's a provincial association that they would belong to that would have insurance. So I know, for instance, if we look at baseball or hockey, they all have provincial associations which would carry their own insurance. Because I worry that, we also own other municipal property that volunteer groups are using, and we're not asking them to have their own insurance. So I think there's still some homework to be done on this. Not that I support, the concept.
Mhm.
I just believe that, and also, not knowing 100% where the budget is going to come from. There might be an opportunity to get under grants. But at this time, I will not be supporting this.
Okay, thank you. And I think one of the things that Councillor Ward Russell brings up is an important consideration for council. We would be essentially paying for an insurance policy or insurance coverage for a group of volunteers. And as Councillor Ward Russell says, we have a number of volunteer organizations that operate within Fundy Alberta. And are we setting a precedent by doing that? And are we opening the door for others to be coming to us and saying, you know, we need you to pay for this for us? So something that council needs to consider. First of all, council can make a decision tonight if you wish, or you can table it to the meeting on September 3rd, I believe it is. That's the regular council meeting. And we can table it until then. Then that might present an opportunity for them to obtain an extra quote. But if council decides to vote in favor of this tonight, then we will be obliged to cover the cost of the insurance per the quote that they have on hand. Any other discussion on the matter? Councillor Jonah, I think.
I understand why they're looking for insurance, and it is to protect them while they're working as well. If they do something, they make a trail that somebody gets injured on, that would protect them as well. I think I would like to see this motion tabled, and obtain a couple of the quotes. Just for something to look at, and I think we need to be careful about setting precedents, as Councillor Russell has mentioned. Lots of volunteer groups that are out there that obtain their own, they have to obtain their own. They've been a fantastic group to deal with. I've been sitting at the table since they started. They work hard. They have a ton of volunteers. I like to see a couple of approaches, just to throw $2,575. I'm not against paying. I guess I meant paying for it. I think a couple of approaches would be good to see.
Okay, so I would need, if that's the case, I would need a motion to table the motion before council to pay that amount to the September 3rd meeting.
I would make that motion.
So moved by Councillor Jonah. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Eldricken. Any discussion on the motion to table? If not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the Pound Hill Tender Award. A council report form was circulated in relation to the award of the Pound Hill repair on Route 114. A motion is required to proceed. If someone would be so kind to read that motion, please.
Whereas Fundy Alberta released a tender FA 2404-4006 seeking proposal for qualified experienced firms to pay the 200 stretch of 114. Whereas a fair tender process was initiated on the budget opportunity effort, the tender was properly advertised, bids were received 3 companies, and were reviewed and evaluated by anyone who were contracted with Fundy Alberta to match project. And whereas the lowest competitive bid was Decorative Construction. 300. Excluding be it resolved that the council of Fundy Alberta authorizes the mayor and clerk to award tender FA 2404-4006 to Dexter Construction Company for $313,000, excluding HST. Be it further resolved that the council of Fundy Alberta authorizes the treasurer to transfer $10,000 sidewalks and $27,102 from the Hillsborough Capital Reserve to the summer maintenance private contract budget to cover costs of it.
So moved by Councillor Land. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Coates. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Land?
I think Pound Hill's a terrible shape and needs fixed. These numbers are extraordinary. I thought they're a little high, but this is the lowest of the 3. And it needs fixed. There's cars going down the wrong side of the road, jigging up and down, and it's only a matter of time for something to start. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Coates?
In favor?
Right, thank you. Anyone?
Just a couple.
Councillor
things.
Elderkin?
Sorry.
No, no.
So the sidewalks, I'm taking it that the whole 10,000 is being transferred, so any work for Alma, Riverside, Albert will be null and void for 2020.
There was no planned work on the sidewalks for 2024. So that budget line really isn't going to get used between now and December.
And the same goes with the summer maintenance. So I did note in there that there was $10,000. I believe it was an estimate for road grade projects.
Mhm.
Where, or do we have a list of where those $10,000 is being spent?
We're formulating a list on that, but we're anticipating we won't be spending more than 10,000 on grading between now and December. So out of the full 200,000 of that summer maintenance budget, we've spent the 39,102 to date, and that's on some projects as well as the engineering so far for the Pound Hill contract.
Yeah.
And then we're reserving some of that money, 10,000 on road grading and 10,000 for contingency, just so we don't completely wipe out that budget and have some money to use between now and December.
Because that's the maintenance. Does it not include our potholes and hole patching and?
Correct.
So we'll be done with that basically for 2024
Correct.
in Riverside, Albert now. Because that's where our money will be going, is to go towards Pound Hill. The allotted amount for Riverside, Albert was 29,885. In the contract for summer maintenance, it's broken down by Alma, Hillsborough, and Riverside, Albert. So by spending the majority, and I'm not disagreeing that Pound Hill, I drive it every day, I'm swerving. It does need to be fixed, but there are some general maintenance, I think, and I can't speak for Alma, but in Riverside, Albert, I'm sure before now in winter, there's gonna be some maintenance that I don't want to see have no budget line for at all.
And that's what we felt the 10,000 of as a contingency for September, October, so these 4 months. That would be where we would pull some of those things from.
Just as a point of clarification for Councillor Elderkin's comments, would the funds that would help fund this, would those be coming strictly from the transportation budget in Hillsborough or all 3 former municipalities? That's an important element.
It's all three.
All three funds.
The
The
budget
full
line,
budget line is the 200,000 is the
Right.
full budget line.
so 43,799 was allocated to Alma, and 126,316 was allocated to Hillsborough, and 29,885 was allocated to Riverside, Albert. That's why, so that's what my concern was, that the summer maintenance money here, plus the sidewalks, for whatever it was gonna be used for, if not used, we're pretty well saying there's not gonna be a whole lot happening in Riverside and Elma for the balance of the 2024 season, for as far as summer maintenance and sidewalks.
When we first came to council a couple of meetings ago to say that we were going to put a tender out for this project, we knew that it was going to be coming in as expensive. That's what the estimates were telling us. And we were struggling to find money where we could in order to get the work completed this year, because we do have that $135,000 that is being part of the provincial municipal highway program. We didn't want to lose the 135,000 if the work didn't get completed this year. So we were moving some things around in order to try to get this project pushed through. It did come in a little bit more than what even was anticipated before the tender went out. We've gone back to the engineers and asked if there was any way that we could be trimming some of the work, whether it's to change the scope of work or whether it's to change the do some of the work in the spring as opposed to this year. There was a top coat option, and we could do the top coat next spring as opposed to this year. However, that increases the cost because now the mobilization of the work crews is twice, so the contractor couldn't guarantee that price if we were splitting it over 2 different sessions. So we did look at different options for that. However, if it's council's wish to keep some additional money in that road and maintenance, the summer maintenance budget line, we could then recommend to take more out of the Hillsborough Reserve in order to accomplish this tender.
Yeah, for me, I understand the importance, But for me, it's strictly going into the budget season when we're allocating these into, as Councillor Arrow always comments on subunits, and that's what we're being taxed on. There's a little expectation that we're gonna have some road maintenance and some work done, which hasn't been the case. That's my concern with this. And I do recognize we're already at the end of August, so the chances are slim, but there is probably some work that needs to be done in Riverside, and
Between
I don't want to lose out on it. So was my concern.
Okay, thank you. So did you say you would be voting in favor of it?
Yes, I'll be
Okay.
voting in favor of it.
All right, thank you. Councilor Ward Russell?
Just a few things. I mean, I appreciate the 135,000 from the municipal highways program, but I really don't think it's enough. I think that, I mean, I know we're trying to negotiate and work with DTI, but I think we need to do a better job at that. I'm aware of other communities that are getting, you know, additional funds, and I'm not sure why we're not on DTI's radar to get that. So I think, you know, first of all, number one is to get a meeting with the senior officials with DTI to find out why we're not on their priority list. And does it mean it could be this project and many others as well? You know, I understand the importance of getting this job completed. I mean, I do travel that road on a regular basis as well, and understand the concern. The 27,102 that would be coming from the reserve, would you be looking for that to be split as well, or is that you're not, Hillsborough's going to
That's
look
the
after that?
Hillsborough Reserve.
I know, but you're not. I know in the past of some vehicles, you've asked for some of that to be split, so that is 100% coming from Hillsborough. Okay. You know, $10,000 in sidewalks, we can just take it, but I think, you know, we can learn a lesson from this and do a better job when it comes to budgeting next year, because you know, we just don't put money in something and then take it away the following 6 months later. So there's a reason why we had put that $10,000 there, and I think there's a need to do better budgeting going forward. I don't think you should take the whole 200,000 from the summer maintenance budget. I think that if there was 49,000 and 29,000 allotted to Alma and to Riverside respectively, then I think that should stay there. And the reserve, capital reserve from Hillsborough should take the remainder of that 60,000 or 70,000, whatever that may be equal.
Well, the motion right now is to do exactly not that,
Right.
which would be, so will you be voting in favor or opposed to the motion?
So based on that reason.
Okay. All right. So just to go back to, and my initial question, which was about the amount of money from the summer maintenance private contract budget. I now, on reflection, remember that we reduced it quite significantly from where it was before because the tax rates were going to be so high. And this is the result of that. I think council, when we move into the budget discussions for 2025, we need to be mindful that if we are expected to do some work like this or on any municipal streets, that stuff costs money. So we would be well advised to maybe reconsider cutting in certain areas when we do that. And I point the finger at myself as well, because I was part of those conversations. So, but I will be voting in favor of the motion to get that done, because I have heard time and time and time again that Pound Hill needs to be repaired. It has been, if I recall correctly, it was on the list of 5-year DTI projects when I first came to council back in 2021, and it had been there for quite some time. So we need to get that done. If there's an opportunity to look internally into our budget and maybe look at reallocating funds from different sources and topping up within the maintenance programs within Alma and Riverside Albert just to compensate for it, then I would suggest we explore the possibility of doing that. But that would need an analysis by the CAO and the treasurer in order to do that. But I will be voting in favor of the motion.
I guess, you know, as long as if, you know, there is an issue that arises in Alma and or Riverside Albert, I mean, we've got to take this into consideration, and we'll need to find that money, because it is not fair to the other communities to be 100% supporting this and then being told that there's no money for them. So
Okay.
as long as we are understanding that we will do that, then
Okay. Any other comments or debate on the motion before I call for the vote? If not, all in favor of the motion as presented, signify by stating aye. Opposed? Noted that Councillor Ward Russell opposes it, and I would vote in favor of it as well. So the motion is carried. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Kiwanis ball field light replacement and repair. A report was provided to members of council in relation to the need for the repair. I would need a motion for that. I believe a draft resolution was prepared.
Whereas the replacement of lights fixture at Kiwanis ball field and community hospital is required, be it resolved that the village of Codiac Council authorizes a transfer of $6,975 from the community center hall, other budgets in parks and playgrounds, other to proceed with the identified work.
So moved by Councillor Jonah. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Land. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Jonah?
I think, something that's got to be really looked at and considered, that even though it's called Kiwanis ball field, is actually owned and maintained by Fundy Albert. It used to be Village of Hillsborough, and that's Fundy Albert. That does not belong to the Kiwanis. It belongs to the village. We need to fix that out.
Okay. Anyone else? Councillor Elderkin?
Yeah, just a couple things for me. One, again, it's a shared service, so that's probably a good thing in this situation. But again, that money was earmarked for the Riverside Albert Rec Center and the Alma Activity Center, a portion of it. So I know has any money been spent out of that budget for this year?
Not yet.
Nothing yet, okay. And the other thing is there's only one quote there. So I would recommend that we at least get one more quote because it's electrical, so it's not a sole source situation.
We did receive a second quote. It was in over that one. And the lag time for that was going to be January before they could do the repairs. So I didn't include it in, I just included the recommendation for the quote that was the lowest quote.
Okay. And the other thing that was noted was that quote is expired now because it says it's not valid for after 30 days. So for me, I will not be supporting this until that's confirmed. And I got a little confused whether we had to replace everything or whether they are going to look at the bulbs to see if they can be replaced.
So the actual fixture fell off. There's no
Right.
fixture there anymore. And they were going to look at extra additional bulbs, but we've turned the lights on and there's no other bulbs that need to be replaced. So they just have to replace the actual light unit itself
For that
one stand
But-
and do the electrical that goes with it.
Okay. So I kind of read it that they were replacing more than one.
Their quote says if there are other bulbs that need to be replaced, they will replace them at $675, I believe it was per
Oh, I
light
kind of
bulb.
read it that, did I misunderstand it? Because I read it that we were replacing all the fixtures on the
No.
four. what's
So
that?
there's four lights on one post.
Okay, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Ward Russell?
yeah, I think my questions might have been answered, but definitely the date on the quote, it's almost 2 months old.
So I've been corresponding with the provider. I did not notice the date on it. This was a quote that was received by our Director of Operations prior to, in July. So I have been corresponding with them and that is still a valid quote. And I apologize, I can get that changed.
And so you say nothing's been spent under the this budget? So again, going forward, I think we need to add a budget line in our 2025 budget that would have something for the ball field, or where that is supposed to be coming from, because there is multiple lights out there, and if this happens every year, then you could be in a $7,000 mess every year. So
When they have the scissor lift there and they're installing the one, we've asked them to take a look at the other 3, I believe it is, and make sure that those are sound.
So will you be voting in favor or opposed to that motion?
close until we can get at least another.
And-
I know that you tried to get a quote, but I think that maybe there's a possibility to try again.
Counselor Jonah?
I'm not saying you did.
I do have a second quote that was
And it's
over,
higher.
yeah.
I think Broadway as well, they have a boom or other companies don't. No, it's just not Kiwanis field, it's community field. This is all Fundy Albert, all of young field that we have in the community. And, tournament coming up in September and then in October and then, it needs to be well lit.
So you need to state whether you'll be supporting. Okay. Counselor Land,
Agree, 100% support.
Counselor Coates,
I'm not in favor. For the reason, I understand that we in Hillsborough Village built the ball field on Kiwanis land, right?
correct.
So do we have a lease with them, or is it a handshake, or? So all of a sudden they say, you take your ball field and go with it. What happens? You got no legal. Just like having a lease and all these people that are renting. And they get the eviction, get 30 days to get your material out of there. If we have a lease on the land, 99 years or whatever, I would be in favor. Up in favor of it. But we just tabled on the trail insurance. We're given this in the sense that it's want.
Mhm.
Not fair.
All right, thank you. I recognize the value that ball field has to the community, but I also recognize that there's been some valid points that have been brought up this evening. So I will be voting in favor of it. That said, I will now call for the vote. So all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. So there's four, so there's three plus myself voting in favor and two, anyone opposed? Councillor Coates and Councillor Elderkin opposed, so the motion is carried. Well, thank you. There are no other agenda items, so I will look for a motion to adjourn for the evening. So moved by Councillor Jonah. So thank you very much.